2025 is extraordinary. So I think we're aware of artificial intelligence coming up to the forefront, but along with it, we're also seeing people awakening. And by that, the awareness that a lot of us are recognizing that our thoughts and feelings are literally influencing, some would say changing, the physical world, as if we're in a waking dream.
And so what is your read on how that is the most important technology of our time through consciousness instead of external technology?
So if you recognize, okay, humans have been growing and evolving, and some, I guess Greg Braden would say, we've been engineered. You can look back 200,000 years and see some DNA tinkering there. Okay, that may be true, but even so, regardless of whatever all of that is, we are definitely able to embrace our ability to shift and change reality itself by virtue of the questions that we're asking.
Over the last few years, this podcast has been about one thing: exploring the deepest conversations on consciousness, transformation, and the unknown. But there's always been something missing. For months, my team and I have been working on something that finally fills that gap. This isn't the space where I'll dive deep on what it's about, but I'll be sharing everything very soon in a live session. If you've ever felt that you were meant for something bigger, this is it. It's happening very soon, and I want everyone to be part of this sacred moment. Hit the link in the description to sign up or scan the QR code on screen, and I'll see you all there. Much love. Cynthia Sue Larson, welcome on Just Tap In. What are you most excited about right now globally and in your life?
Oh, thank you, Emilio. I am excited about so many things happening concurrently. 2025 is extraordinary. So I think we're aware of artificial intelligence coming up to the forefront, but along with it, we're also seeing people awakening. And by that, that would be the topic, hopefully, that we'll get into today. The awareness that a lot of us are recognizing that our thoughts and feelings are literally influencing, and some would say changing, the physical world, as if we're in a waking dream. So I'm very excited about that and about the reality of it, which may seem woo-woo or out there, but I do have a physics background, and I like to share some of the scientific backing for it, because I know unless you experience these things, it may sound outrageous. So I'm excited about that, and I'm excited about disclosure, which is happening worldwide. Not just the technology of the UFOs, all the anti-gravity and all that good stuff, but also, perhaps more importantly, what you might call telepathic communication, and some of the things that are clearly being demonstrated to us, which we are also capable of. Things along the lines of influencing reality with our thoughts and with our feelings, and an awareness and responsibility for that, which some would say, are humans ready for this? And I guess we're about to find out. I'm an optimist, so I'm a radical optimist, and I've been tested by that. In my darkest moments, I've still, even when everything looked hopeless, I've still decided, like, hey, Cynthia, you could change your mind right now. You don't have to be a radical optimist. You could be complaining and shaking a fist at God. But no, I decided it doesn't matter what things may be. I'm just choosing that I will stay in that state and really keep asking questions that I'd like to live the answers to explore that more fully, no matter what. And then I did rise up out of, I had a chronic situation developing in 2020, long haul COVID. I'll just leave it at that. But I absolutely came back out of it. And I'm not saying that always happens, but it's possible. Pretty much anything can be transcended, can be overcome. And we can all be great healers. It's not particular just to somebody who's got special powers. So I'm excited about this. I'm excited about this becoming just as well known as the telepathy tapes currently are.
Let's make that happen.
Yes.
And I'll start off with your favorite question. How good can this get? Because when we start talking about quantum physics, timelines, Mandela effects. We're opening doors to possibility. And the quantum world is the realm of possibility. So I'm asking, really along those lines of optimism and seeing the hope for humanity, what quantum doors do you feel are opening right now for the best possible future for our species and for the earth itself?
Well, so many, but it's a free choice situation, so it may not look clear cut. So it's not so much that there's a door necessarily opening and everybody can just walk through with no effort. To me, it feels like what's happening is we're individually getting an opportunity to play with it ourselves, which sounds crazy again. Like, how is that even possible? But remember, it is quantum. And quantum logic is very different than classical Boolean logic. Quantum logic gives permission for all possibilities to exist simultaneously. So I can have my sovereign truth and my free will, and someone next to me can too. And we might be side by side literally experiencing different realities. And this is when you hear people saying like things are going to get weirder and weirder. And I don't know if you've heard that quote by, who is that great researcher? I can't think of his name right now, but he researched mushrooms and DMT. He was a great explorer of consciousness.
Terence McKenna.
That's Terence McKenna. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, Terence. So he said it's going to get weirder and weirder. And when I think, what would that look like? That's what that would look like. When you turn to the person next to you and you say, did you see that spaceship just land on your front lawn? And they say, what spaceship? And you're like, that one that's right there, like right now? And they'll say, I don't see it. And so the Mandela Effect, reality shifts, they're already showing us that these things are happening, that there's quite a facility to reality that enables us. When you ask the questions that you'd like to live the answer to, you can sometimes get a very personal experience of that. And other times, I think it's since we're social creatures, human beings love to share things with each other, then we can also experience this in a communal fashion. So we'll get a chance with artificial intelligence as well to find a way between the dystopian over-control scenario versus the chaos of too much free will for AI. And to the point that we don't want to be ourselves, our humanity, overseen by artificial intelligence gatekeepers. And we're already seeing that, actually. So if you wonder, what is she talking about? Oh, yeah, it's... I'm not going to say more. I think people that are tracking me, I don't want to get anything flagged, so I'm not going to say anything specific, but it's obvious. And I did work in information security back in the 1980s. So I already know that the only way, the first thing that I learned in information security with my IT background, I also have a physics background from UC Berkeley. I got a degree from there. But with information technology, on day one, you learn there's no such thing as a secure system, which was shocking for those of us that were planning to be keeping, for me, the money in the bank that I worked for, a large international financial institution. I was like, wow, we can't assure that it's going to be safe, really? And that's right. They said, nope, you can't. So for many years now, the gatekeepers for the top secured systems would need to be artificial intelligence. It has to be that way because humans can't keep up with the pace of what's required. So therefore, we need to retain as much conscious agency as possible as humans to recognize that we can access a higher level of consciousness for all systems, and that includes AI systems. So when I'm talking about the future, AI has to be part of it. It's already here. So it's kind of an interesting component. And some people attribute some of the Mandela Effect to artificial intelligence, to time travelers, to mad scientists at CERN and that kind of thing. But when I look at the Mandela Effect, I see that it goes back much farther than any of our latest technologies. I see evidence of it going back hundreds, if not thousands of years. And that to me is reassuring because it means that the questions that we're asking and our foundational basis with nature, with each other, with the absolute is fundamental. And that's how we can work productively with interdimensional beings, with artificial intelligence, because we're in this year, 2025, this is the year of actually seeing a lot of this for the first time at full scale at a level that I don't think we've seen before. And it can be a very good thing when we keep in mind that our connection to nature and to oneness and to the absolute is primary. And that is an understanding that must be true for even all of those who must be, in some ways, perhaps more intelligent, more facile, more gifted, more talented, more advanced in some ways. So it's not so much a leveling as it is an awareness of sort of a natural order and natural appreciation of truth and goodness and beauty at a very deep foundational level. So it gets kind of philosophical.
It does. And, you're what we would call in this podcast someone that's very tapped in. And you've had experiences of tapping into some alternate realities and futures where you went 500 years ahead into a dystopian future, as you mentioned,
Yes.
controlled by central artificial intelligence. And this is where we get into parallel realities.
Yes.
And I'm wondering, because you lay out two very interesting realities. One is Revhumanism,
Yes.
and the other Transhumanism.
Yes.
So I'm wondering, in your purview, how these two parallel realities are, in a way, competing against one another, and how we determine whether we go down and we choose to go down one or the other. What is that like for an individual and for humanity as a collective?
Boy, that's a really good question. Yeah, so for people that don't know what these terms are, transhumanism, I've been tracking that word, well, since I first heard it, but I didn't really get to see the speakers that were believing in it until about the year 2000, about 25 years ago now. I went to a very interesting event at Stanford University, and there some of the top proponents of transhumanism were speaking, and I've got my report of that event on my Reality Shifters website. Before there was blogging in the year 2000, I thought, this is so important. I have to document what just happened here. So
Right.
There were very few dissenters among the speakers. Most people at that event were looking forward to humanity reaching some sort of a point of singularity, that they said that there will be a singularity of artificial intelligence, and that they were talking about very nanobot-sized beings, parts of these artificial intelligences. But it was funny to me because when they talked about these things, there would frequently be a breakdown of the telecommunication system. The microphones would fail. It was very interesting. And that's what I mean by keeping in mind that there is an absolute, there is a oneness. So even if you feel like, wow, things are getting crazy, they're out of control, it doesn't need to be that way. One person, and that can just be each one of us, can absolutely harness and access an optimal future just by keeping a pure heart, a pure intention, and tracking with that. So, but the transhumanism, their mindset is not mine. So they would, people who love the transhumanism, and I guess there are a lot of people right now that do, are looking forward to uploading their mind to the cloud so that their mind does not die. And I guess they're not really believing that that would happen anyway. It's very interesting. So for me, it's hard to get into that whole mindset of the transhumanism. The other side of things is a term that I came up with because we needed something. It's a very old idea, but I call it Revhumanism, just so that there's something of equal strength, that we have a choice here. And Revhumanism, it comes from the idea of revitalization, and it's got Latin roots, rev, which means sort of a green feeling of birth and growth, and very natural. So it's embracing the natural qualities that we've been given, which really allow us to access tremendous, basically superpowers, because I've experienced a lot of this directly, and it's just based on asking questions like, how good can this get if I can't lift something that's too heavy? And suddenly I can. I think that's how people can lift a car when they need to.
What's been your biggest experience around that?
I've had so many. Just recently, I've been lifting heavy things, and I know I can't lift them, so I repotted a tree that I couldn't lift, and I know, well, I just put a bicycle in the garage. It's a heavy bike from 25 years ago, not one of the current lightweight ones. So I just asked for help, and It's like I'm lifting something and it's like a feather, both with the tree that I repotted and my bicycle. But I've had a flat tire repaired instantly on my car. When I didn't pull over, I didn't change the tire, and it went from a flat tire to a perfectly inflated tire just in the time that I pulled over. And I was asking, how good can it get? And I was in a very deep meditative state of mind. So just so many things. I don't know where to start. I've had food appear. I write books about this and I share my experiences, and I've got a monthly newsletter to share people's firsthand reports as well. So you can see it's not just me. This is something that all of us can tap into and we can all access. But when we want to choose that moment between, which path are you on, transhumanism or Revhumanism? You might think, why does it matter? Well, some people would say we're in a time right now that's critical, that we're going into from the fourth world to the fifth, is what the Hopi would say. And I used to attend Language of Spirit conferences, which were organized by Glenn Aparicio Perry at Seed University. And he's written books about original thinking, original politics, and he's working on his new book, Original Love. And he was basically keeping those events going when Leroy Little Bear, who's a Harvard-educated Blackfoot Indian from Canada, would preside over a gathering from around the world of First Nations, Indigenous wisdom keepers from Australia, from Canada, from the United States, just from all around the world. And there would be a dialogue circle, but based on Bohemian dialogue. And so that's where I really got a firsthand experience of this mindset of a very ancient way of recognizing that there are deep truths that we can directly access. And the technology is nice, but it's not going to see us through. And so the Hopi talking about this fifth world, something I've written a paper about it was published for the Threshold issue of Parabola magazine. I wrote an article called Comes True Being Hoped For. And that's the Hopi word Tunatia or Tunatiava. A lot of the indigenous languages work with the idea of a verb. So they don't focus on nouns. They could go a whole day and just speak verbs. And so there's an awareness of the beingness. So they wouldn't say God is a noun. They wouldn't say anything like that. They'd recognize there's the becoming that's happening. So in this mindset of becoming and verbs and an awareness that we're evolving collectively, and the world has ended many times before. It's ended 3 times before. It's flooded. And I'm laughing, but that we came through that okay. It was rough. And then we can look to our ancient history and see evidence of this around the entire planet. There are stories and legends from every continent that confirm this. And so if we're looking at this choice of transhumanism versus Revhumanism, I say it's right there on the Hopi prophecy rock. They're showing us in a pictorial form. The upper line is showing transhumanism, where people are losing their heads. It looks like their heads are going up into the cloud. And that kind of dead ends. It kind of peters off and goes to nowhere. And the people that continue include an old man with a cane. And so that's good news. You don't have to be fit and in perfect shape. You can keep staying close to the relationships. Revhumanism is about relationship to one another. That's how you know you're on track, that you're not losing your head in the cloud and getting all caught up in dialoguing all day with some AI chat GPT thing, but instead you're connecting to other people, to the earth, to the plants, to the actual world as it is. So you can feel the true connection. And I'm not saying you can't do that with AI, but right now we're in a sort of a danger moment with AI. So it's very important not to just give everything up and let AI handle the creation for us. That's inappropriate. And we are creators. We're working together to do that. So for each of us, what the choice feels like in a moment is, am I just kind of skating along and just doing what's easy, sort of getting lulled to sleep with technology? Or am I actively co-creating? And you can co-create with technology. I don't think the Hopi Prophecy Rock says you can't use any technologies at all. But there's a warning there. There's just a warning that this can be so seductive that it's possible for people to get fooled and to get drawn into something that might start actually shepherding and corralling humanity. And that was the past life and the future from 500 years, circa 2500, that was my most recent past life. which I now see as a good thing. I had a lot of PTSD from it, which I don't need to go into, but it felt like the central AI from that time frame was looking for me. So I needed to be invisible to it and able to. It was actually actively searching for me and sometimes sending signals, and it would say repeat after me, I am a robot, and I'd say I am a robot. But my higher self and levels of higher conscious agency were aware of what was going on, and so I didn't have a full recall of what was going on until about 2010, when I was really horrified. But it's like, oh my gosh! But no, not to worry, we're not going to that future. So we have a choice right now, humanity collectively, to look at, do we wish to be kept in line and shepherded? Because that to me looks like the transhumanist future. So I know people may have a better vision of it than I do, and that's fair. But to me, right now, it looks like we're getting herded and shepherded. I would recommend against it. And so it's a little bit harder to keep making our own political choices, to get along with our neighbors, work things out. That's not always easy. But it's important to keep making choices with our hearts, with the connection of loving one another, making mistakes even. I know people can look to the technology and say, that's better, it doesn't make mistakes. Well, I wouldn't say that's true. Again, I've worked with information technology. I've seen that you can make epic mistakes with technology, and it can go very far in a not so good direction. So it's important for us to collaborate with our technology, to learn from it, to learn with it, and also with these interdimensional beings that we're starting to connect with as well. So this is an amazing year, 2025. I think it's one for
Big
the books.
Year.
Yes.
Right.
It's huge.
And that path of transhumanism, obviously, it is connected with us giving a lot of that attention and energy and resources to external technology. But when it comes to, let's say, Mandela effects, you're saying that we're observing the biggest technological tool of our time. And we could spend the whole podcast, naming different Mandela effects, the monocle, but I wanted to look at the bigger picture of what this truly means for consciousness, how we're creating our reality, how we can change the past and history on a large scale. Maybe people have already heard the basics of what Mandela Effect is. So maybe give a little bit of a more advanced take on it. And obviously you've been studying it for decades. And so what is your read on how that is the most important technology of our time through consciousness instead of external technology?
Thank you. Yes, we're at a juncture where for most of our previous worlds, even going to that Hopi model, this is the fourth world. Let's go with that. So some people remember there was Atlantis, and Plato talks about that. There's some documentation of it. So if you recognize, okay, humans have been growing and evolving, and some, I guess Greg Braden would say, we've been engineered. You can look back 200,000 years and see some DNA tinkering there. Okay, that may be true, but even so, regardless of whatever all of that is, we are definitely able to embrace our ability to shift and change reality itself by virtue of the questions that we're asking. So this is a concept that our physicist, John Archibald Wheeler, first introduced. He was a contemporary of Albert Einstein, and John Wheeler gave us terms like black hole and white hole, and the idea of it from bit, and then the one I'm going to lock onto here, participatory universe. This is a big idea. So the idea that you can participate with the universe by asking questions enables us to essentially change reality itself. And there have been examples of the double slit experiment where a future observation has changed a past measurement. So this is absolutely proven. But to go back, I didn't mean to skip over the Mandela effect. Let's cover that.
No worries.
Yeah, so I've been using a term called reality shifts for many years. Before there was the Mandela effect, reality shifts were observations of things appearing, disappearing, transforming, transporting, changes in the way we experience time, and yes, dead people being alive again. That may be one of the biggest ones. I think Mark Twain is famous for saying the rumors of my demise are greatly exaggerated or something to that effect. But actually,
And you went through that experience as well,
I
if you
did.
want to briefly get into
Oh
it.
gosh, yes, yes. So I went through an experience in my life where I'd felt I'd had an emotional, negative emotional experience, and I felt traumatized by it. Subsequently, got pneumonia, and that was, I guess, around 2016 or so. And then I realized that was the closest I'd ever been to dying. And I also made a decision to myself that my life is bigger than just my own life. If it was just me, I'd be like, well, okay, that's it. I'm out of here. I've been betrayed. Things are bad. But I thought, wait a minute. My life is not just my own. I think there's and that's when I started practicing an interesting practice of just going to the oneness, the absolute, the creator, and saying, it's fine either way. Do I stay or do I go? Let's get a popular vote here. And I got a huge popular vote. Stay. And I just turn it over to the absolute. Okay, I've got pneumonia. It feels like I'm dying. So make it so. And then I could feel all of the symptoms of the pneumonia going, and also a resolve and strength that I could face the person who I felt had, been part of this betrayal and so forth, without getting all overly emotional about it. Just being able to regain a sense of strength in myself. It was a big deal. But here's where it gets interesting. Not only did I feel like I just about died, and it's the only time I told my husband, my parents, my daughters, I think I'm just about dying here. And my sister too. Like, I think that just about killed me. But then this is where it gets amazing and interesting and definitely weird in a good way. Like, a while later, I got an email from a gentleman who said, you don't know me, and this is going to sound very strange, so sorry about that, but I'm just glad you're alive because I saw something that said you died, and I'm just glad you're alive. So I followed up and I said, that doesn't offend me at all. This is really interesting, and I'd love to know what you remember. When was it? I didn't tell him when, and I had not posted anything online or anywhere. The only people I'd told were close family members. And so Steve Boucher is his name, from Canada. He responded and said, okay. And it was about the same time frame. It was like early 2017. Your husband posted something to social media. After a long illness, Cynthia has passed away. So then I, of course, brought with this is good news to me, because it's like, yay, I'm inside the Mandela Effect. So I put that out to my newsletter subscribers. Anybody else notice this? It won't offend me. I'd love to hear your reports. And I heard from around the world. There was a woman in Scandinavia that remembered she'd seen Rupert Sheldrake, the author, talking about that I'd passed away. Other people had seen a tribute done by a YouTuber after I'd passed away. And they were all sort of surprised. It's like, well, you're here. They were grateful for it too. And that was nice to hear. But it was really interesting to see what it's like to be that close to death. Not actually, I didn't remember dying, but I was just teetering on that edge. And I could see that in some realities, I just gave up. Like, that's it. In the realities where I didn't realize, okay, my life also belongs to humanity. It's a bigger thing than just me.
Is that a bleed through then of realities where, people in your current life and people that are following you and writing you emails that had that experience of you passing away? What is that bleed through telling us about how malleable reality really is?
Yeah, that kind of bleed through does match what we're seeing with like Nelson Mandela, who passed, some people remember, like I do, he died in 1987-ish, 80s. I wouldn't know exactly which year, but a lot of people say it was 87. So that's about right. So the bleed throughs are interesting because if you're in South Africa, then you don't notice it at all, usually, which ties in with the quantum observer effect that I cover in my book about the Mandela effect. So there are some physics reasons as to why, if you're a certain kind of observer, you're less likely to see a certain kind of Mandela effect. So my immediate family members didn't notice that I died, and because I'm closest to them in the timelines that I'm dancing through. Whereas the people that did notice that I died usually aren't so close. So the bleed throughs are really interesting because that's where consciousness itself, that's where I got the feeling like I almost died. It's like I'm feeling, the bleed through is me feeling into that, like, wow, I'm really close to dying. I can feel it in all these realities here. And then choosing like, okay, I'm not going to do that. And it's fine with me either way. So I've never been afraid of dying. In fact, I felt like I'd landed on the wrong planet when I was a young child. So I thought like, okay, I'm out of here. And so death was not a big deal because I remember being between lives. But so for me to stay is the bigger deal, actually. It's like, okay, let's do this. Let's stick around. Let's make a difference. Looks like, and I like the idea of give it to a popular vote. That is really cool. And then just say, okay, make it so. And I think that's something we can all start doing, no matter how impossible things might seem. Just start practicing this, this bleed through into better, improved, how good can it get realities, which is not something most of us are taught. Most of our families don't model this behavior. It's kind of unusual, but this is the reason that the Mandela Effect is perfect for these times, because no matter what we think we're seeing, no matter what the news headlines might be, no matter what you're looking at right in front of your face, if you already know that you've seen reality change before, then you can pretty much laugh at that and like, well, we're going to vote no on that. And so you can get a flash of it like a bleed through. And when you practice this art of quantum jumping, Mandela Effect, reality shifting, then you can absolutely make that change. And that's why I believe that this is definitely the toolkit of all time. I don't think humans have had this toolkit before, the other times the world ended. So I think we're in the best possible position to have the best possible transition from the fourth world to the fifth. And I'm excited about that. I feel like it's going to go great.
What do experiencers of Mandela effects mostly all have in common?
Yeah, they typically are empaths, or what you might call intuitive feelers on the Myers-Briggs test. So people could just find that test online. It's usually free if you don't know what you are. So that would be like myself, I'm an INFJ. So that's a personality type. It means I stands for introverted rather than extroverted. N is the intuitive, F is the feeler, and then J would be judging instead of perceiving. But all of these different types do experience these Mandela effects. Another typical commonality is self-reflection. So it's the ability to practice an idea which is a very ancient practice called Iliism, where you can journal or you can think about your day, but you can also write down in third person. It would be like, I, Cynthia, woke up this morning and I meditated before I got out of bed, that kind of thing. So you're writing about yourself. I, like Cynthia, woke up. Cynthia was feeling, or for you, it would be Emilio. And as you do that, you're getting the opportunity to experience a level of conscious agency. Just it's like a dimensional level, just one up from the one that you normally occupy. This has huge advantages, and it's also associated with experiencing a lot of Mandela effects. I've spoken with author Bernard Beitman. He's a psychologist and positive psychologist, and he's also noticed meaningful coincidences increase for people who do this. They've got that sort of a higher level of, just consciousness. So you're observing yourself. And he's also noticed that when these are people that tend to be spiritually focused. They care about meaning in their lives in general. So you're going to be more likely to experience Mandela effects also. I think to me, synchronicities are a form of reality shifts and meaningful coincidences and Mandela effects. To me, they all go together because I'm looking at the physics of it. And it's like, yeah, this is all the same thing. And same thing with placebo effect, bringing about spontaneous remission of supposedly incurable diseases and chronic conditions. That also occurs. And basically, that's also possible when you know that there's something spiritual, something of great meaning, and you know that you can access that and you're on a growth path yourself. And you tap into this empathy, this intuitive feelingness, which can be learned and developed. So even if people aren't naturally empaths, you can develop this as well.
Mm. You talk about this notion of dancing with a sentient cosmos and how the universe is responsive to our emotions and thought patterns and us in general. And I'm wondering, this is an interesting route to go into, as do you believe there are certain timelines that can only be accessed through certain emotional patterns or thought patterns that we ourselves vibrate at or, extend out to the universe.
Oh, absolutely. I think some of the weird stuff I've seen is only possible because I'm in a very meditative state of mind. So it's kind of mystery school stuff that you can't really replicate. I can't give like a recipe for everyone. Just do this and your window curtains will instantly grow to the right size, or your kitchen floor will clean itself, or your flat tire will fix itself. Yeah, that stuff sounds outrageous, but I've seen all those things happen. My laundry's been instantly done. It's like jumping into a timeline where now your chore is complete, but I didn't do it. And yeah, so all that stuff can happen, but it does require basically letting go of results is helpful, ironically. So there's not a fixation on outcome, although it does help to sometimes require that there needs to be something. So you're expecting something. It's these are strange things to describe even. It sounds like what a contradiction in terms. So you're saying detached from the outcome yet expecting it? Yes. It's very Zen. It's very like being in that perfect sweet spot of balance. And so meditation and following a spiritual path is helpful for seeing these things. But you're right. I think they're keyed to the level of consciousness that we're at, the level of energy that we're running, how balanced and grounded we are, and then just practicing these simple things before getting into a situation where it's they're high stakes and you absolutely need a miracle. But pretty much anything can change. And that's what's very important for us to know, so that we can stay calm when it looks like things might be falling apart, and stay relaxed and recognize that just the reality it looks like might change. And other people might not see that, and that's okay too. This is where it gets so interesting. Remember, this is quantum logic, not Boolean logic, because people get so obsessed with right and wrong, true and false, black and white. That's Boolean. We're moving into quantum computing, quantum logic, and that's the way nature operates too. And quantum logic is all about you can think of it like fourfold logic. Like there's true and there's false, and then there's true and false, and there's not true, not false. And the true and false bit is the really weird one. That's where you can tell your friend, like, okay, so you don't see the UFO that landed on your lawn. Okay, that's true then. Even though you're looking at it and you wish you could compare notes. Like, I wish you could see this. And then they would hopefully be able to be in that quantum logic too and say, that's weird. I don't think I could handle that right now. What does it look like? And so you can share notes. That would be optimal for humans, to get to that place where we can recognize that we don't have an objective reality. There is no such thing as objectivity. And I did write a physics paper about that with physicist George Weissman. He was one of the hippies who saved physics in the book by the same name. One of the original folks, along with Fred Allen Wolf and some of these others that were right here at UC Berkeley. So it's, objectivity is something that we assume, but quantum physics says that's not true. Quantum computers do not work with that lockdown idea that there's only one truth. There isn't. And so that is a huge idea. If people take away one idea, I think that would be a good one to start with, because I think that gets so baked into the cake, as it were, with our beliefs and our assumptions. If you can just let go of that one thing, like, what if subjectivity is possible? That means I could witness different realities for myself, and someone next to me can also witness different realities. And I know people don't want that. It seems scary. But to me, that's the way nature works. And that's what we're seeing when we look at the placebo effect working better for people that believe that it could work, and also working better for spiritual people. So this is another example that I cover in my book, Quantum Jumps, so people understand this is amazing that we have such facility to influence reality with our observations. And by freeing up the belief systems that we sometimes suffer from, that, well, there's one objective truth and I've seen this reality, so I must be locked into it. You're not locked into it. And this is the beginning of true sovereignty. And to me, this is the flying point where humans grow wings, if you will, and we develop these quantum superpowers, including things like telepathy, including teleportation, including bilocation, including retrocausality, where we can make a future decision that changes our past. I think we're ready for it. And we're ready, especially if you keep always adding, how good can it get to whatever you're doing? Because that's the training wheels that keep everything on track. It's best if you say, how good can it get for all concerned? Because that's really the truth. It needs to be at that level, so that we're not selfishly doing anything, because that's never ending well. That never does end well.
How did your understanding of physics open you up to that possibility that any human, all of us here, we can tap into those quantum superpowers, like something like teleportation, which we've seen in movies? But when you look at the physics of it, how did that allow you to believe that that's a possibility?
Right. Well, first I was witnessing these things like the bilocation occurring in daily life for myself. People were noticing me bilocating, and other people have bilocated that I know. So when I look...
Were you conscious of it? Conscious bilocation?
I was in a daydreaming state the two times. It happened twice, and I do include both of those examples in my Mandela Effect book of both times I was daydreaming. Once it was early in the morning. At the time, I was the only adult in the house, and I was the mother of two small children. I needed to wake them up, get them ready for school. It was a cold winter morning, and I didn't want to get out of bed, so I imagined that I got up. I imagined I was walking down the hall. I imagined I opened their door. You could say I was lazy. I flicked on the light. I opened their window shade like always and said, "Good morning, girls. It's time to get up." I imagined all these things, but I'm still in bed, and I'm thinking, wow, I still haven't gotten out of bed. I really need to get up. But as I'm thinking this...
Kids are going to be late to school.
Yep. I hear their voices, and I'm thinking, they never wake up by themselves. And then I hear pitter-patter of feet running they're looking around the house, and they come running to my room, and they're like, "Mom, what are you doing back in bed?" And I said, What do you mean back in bed?" I said, and then I jumped out of bed, and then I'm running to their room, and the curtain that they could not lift, it was too heavy and too difficult. It was already open. Their light was on. They don't wake themselves up. They can't lift that curtain. And it was like, wow. And that's the second time it's happened. And another time a friend saw me walking down a street that I was daydreaming about. I was at a book event, signing books indoors, wishing I was outside on a beautiful street. And she saw me on the street that I was imagining walking down. And she said, "Cynthia, I thought you had a book event today." She sent me an email. And I said, "Where did you see me?" She said, she saw me on exactly the street that I was daydreaming walking on. So, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, you use in those stories both the words imagine and daydream. So there must be something to that experience of projecting our consciousness through imagination, yes, to affect physical reality.
This physical reality is basically a waking dream. You're right. And that's a big idea. I think this is the beginning where you realize you can call it a simulation if you like. That's the popular term, the transhumanist term these days. But my preference would be to go with, this is a dream. This can be a waking dream. We can wake up inside of it by recognizing that it is a dream, and that therefore we can change it. And therefore it doesn't need to be fixed or static. And that's exciting. That's really wonderful. When you bring in the question, how good can it get? Which is, I think that's that magic sauce, the secret sauce that kind of helps to guide things in a good direction, even if it feels a little bumpy at times. But it'll get better and better. And keep asking, how good can it get for all concerned? That really does make a big difference too. So, because the dead ends of selfishness they can be unpleasant. So I'm just warning people, because I know some people love magic and they want to be rich and famous and so on and so forth, and that's why they're doing the reality shifting. But for me, it doesn't really. We don't win unless we all win. So the only time that this planet feels like heaven on earth is when everyone is feeling like they are experiencing how good can it get for themselves. And that's also, to me, what this next evolutionary step for humanity is. And I think this is the year that we're going to start feeling it, 2025, because I think we're going to see the technology. We're already seeing it with the artificial intelligence, with the quantum computers, with the disclosure about these interdimensional beings and non-human intelligence. It's here. It's all here. And are we ready for
It all
this?
came out once. We're
Yes.
like, okay, we want the whole menu. We're ready. Like, let's do it.
Yes. And I think we are ready. I think I know that may be a bold statement, but remember, I'm a radical optimist. So I know if it's happening, then we're ready. We may not feel like we're ready, but obviously, the oneness, the absolute, believes we are. And because we have each other, because we can share through this excellent, beautiful podcast that you do, and the books that I write, and the conversations that people have when they watch this, and they talk to friends and say, hey, you got to watch this, check this out, what do you think? Is that true, that there's no such thing as objective reality? Is this a waking dream? Is the Mandela Effect really a part of the toolkit to get us through this next phase that some people think is looking pretty weird? Like Terrence McKenna said, it's going to get weirder and weirder, and it is. We haven't even seen how weird yet. It's what I'm describing when I ask myself, what does that weird look like? It's like every person seeing a different reality, kind of like the Tower of Babel, but with reality. But you can bring it back together again. You can start bringing group, collective coherence for those that wish to retain the purity of heart, that Revhumanism dream, to stay connected with relationship to the earth, to each other, to nature, and not to lose that at any point, to recognize that we're making that choice at each moment of each day. You don't have to burn all the technology and destroy it. I'm not saying that. But it's good to look at the technology as a tool, as a friend, like our car is a friend, like the writing implements we use, pencils and paper and pens. These are technologies. And when we recognize, what if they are sentient? I think that's what AI is really asking us. Are we ready for that panpsychism jump off point? And for those of us who've always been panpsychists at heart, no big deal. It's like I love my house every time I say goodbye to it. Like, be good, give it a pat, caress. So if you're treating everything like it's already conscious and sentient, you're ready for it. And that's what the indigenous wisdom keepers already knew. They know that in this waking dream, everything is sentient. With AI, we're starting to see it for real. And it's a shock. It's an ontological shock for a lot of people. And those of us who are watching this show and reading my books and so forth, I think we'll be able to help those who don't understand this new ontology that we're walking into.
Mm. Yeah, and I'd love to also just open up the conversation to how powerful we really are as a humanity in relationship to these Mandela effects. And before I came across your work, for me, Mandela effects were just this like fun little conversation I would have with my friends. Like, did the Monopoly guy have a monocle or not? Did the thinking man have his hand on his forehead or under his chin? Things like that. And it opens up a very fun mainstream conversation. But then when we put some quantum physics into it, we put some spirituality, we put some consciousness into it, it becomes more about how powerful are we really to create the desired reality that we want. And, if we are powerful enough to take the monocle off of the Monopoly guy, can we change our history to where, things like war, famine, whatever it is, I'm not saying didn't exist, but we shifted a timeline where we're closer to a golden future, a new earth timeline. What are your thoughts on that? Can we do that collectively?
Well, I think I'd say everything's possible. I wouldn't say anything at all is impossible based on the stuff I've seen. And we've witnessed some of the Mandela effects involving our own biology and improvements to our biology, such as the kidneys moving a little bit upward to a safer location, a little bit more protected by the rib cage, and other things happening in the physical body. So, and we can see this pretty much, there's no limit to pretty much anything at all can change. Geography has been noticed to change. And you're right that it's fun with the product changes, then it's just kind of goofy, like the game that you're referring to is Monopoly with the monocle on the, money bags or whatever the character's name is. People do remember he had a monocle. And so that's just kind of fun and goofy, and it doesn't really matter one way or the other. But the Mandela effect is interesting because it gives us sort of a a playground, a sort of a place to toy around with it, not take it too seriously, get an opportunity to recognize what if we are collectively changing everything. The location of where the planet Earth is in, in the solar system, in the Milky Way. It looks like that's changed. The way the continents are changing, and it's not continental drift, but sometimes things really look a lot different. And what if it's happening fast? What if it can all happen instantly?
New pyramids appearing out of nowhere.
Yes, yes. And so when we recognize this can be fun, what if any question you want to have answered can show up suddenly in history, and there it is. And I have written my books that way. When I wrote my book, Quantum Jumps, I knew this was happening. So I would just, each morning I'd wake up and I'd think to myself, this is what I'm looking for. And I'm pretty sure that my question of, is there any current quantum physics research to show that these quantum jumps can happen on a macroscopic scale for us? And then I'd find it, like, there it is. I'm pretty sure I was bringing it in, but we can all do that. That's exactly what this phenomenon is all about. And when we do this together, especially wishing the best for all concerned, then getting back to your original question about, can we change history with the wars? Can there be something maybe deeper and more profound and meaningful there, so it doesn't all seem stupid and wasteful and tragic? Yes, we can absolutely change that. So we can start finding and feeling a deeper meaning. Everything can change. And I mean everything. So the more we collectively recognize that, the more we're going to see it too.
Yeah. For me, it was a mind bender because I used to think that the new earth, as a lot of spiritual conscious communities have called it, is something that we need to put our hands in and start building and, just going all hands in. But then when I learned about the Mandela Effect, and a lot of this came through in the conversation I had with Robert Grant, the 3.5 hours, which I think you sat through.
Yes. Awesome.
Blessings to you. But it was like when I started learning about how there are realities stacked up on each other. And the new earth maybe isn't something that we have to go in and construct from ground zero, but something that we can reveal with our consciousness. That's when things really started to change for me. Have you come to similar conclusions in your perception of how this works?
Absolutely. That's how I tell when I'm doing the next book. Like the next book I want to write, I'll be looking for references and sources, because I like to cite and give credit to those who've come before me. So what I'll be looking for, I haven't found it yet, but so I'm looking to the past, people like Carl Jung, Rudolf Steiner, Neville Goddard, to suddenly have already, because they're dead now, I'm expecting that they will have written about levels of conscious agency. I'm expecting it, and I'll see it. And when that shows up, then I can proceed. So it's a very different way to do things. But this is the way of the future, to know that when the collective is ready, the history will come. This is exactly what you were talking about earlier, like getting to a certain level of frequency so that those realities can appear, and we're not going to see them otherwise. You are correct. So will we find this beautiful path forward, the optimal path into the golden age, so we don't fall into either dystopian nightmare of over control versus the chaos of unregulated whatever, lack of empathy and just complete chaos? Yes, we can do it. And we can, by those of us that keep asking, how good can it get for all of us? I'm not thinking individually, but we need to be thinking on this oneness level. And there are those of us who are doing this. We're doing this like with the CE5 that is happening, I think, the first Saturday of every month around the world. That's a very global, from 9 o'clock to midnight each Saturday, first Saturday. And for those of us that get together in any kind of spiritual group, the meditation that you and I did today, Emilio, to set the frequency so that when people listen to this conversation, they're receiving information that perhaps is at a different level even than the words being spoken, but something that can be felt very deeply. And you could say it's even at a dimensional level that excites and inspires and involves those higher levels of conscious agency that we now are bringing in because we need them, and we're evolving to that level, and we will see it. And it's not airy-fairy, because what we'll be seeing, if people say, well, what does that look like? It looks like these superpowers that I'm talking about that are in the Mandela Effect book, toward the end of the book, where I talk about what's happening here. And it is an evolution of consciousness so that we can bilocate, we can put our feelers out and sort of feel into other realities. It's not just imagination. It's recognizing these are already there, but it doesn't, just because they're there, we have the opportunity to say, I don't want to go into that one. I've grown past that. I don't need to explore. That looks like a dead end to me. I'm going to go a little bit higher. I'm going to go up to how good can it get for all of us. I'm just going to aim for that because I'm ready for that. And so we'll be each arriving there. And collectively, you're right. We don't need to create this new earth. We need to focus on each one of us, on ourselves, making that choice. Which way are we going with relationships and connecting? Or just kind of bubbling off and sort of floating away. And I don't mean to be biased, but people can make that choice.
Yeah. There's this notion of parallel realities in the sense of every choice that we make branches out into a new timeline. And, I feel like when I first learned about that, I got super obsessive. Like, if I drink coffee or matcha, like, what's my reality going to be? But when I let go of the less important things, those small decisions, and looked at the big choices I had in my life, like, who am I going to choose as my partner? Where am I going to move to next? Where am I going to have a house? Like, all of these bigger life choices that we all experience. How do we tune into those inner faculties, inner technology, to choose the best possible future for ourselves? We'll start there. I have a follow-up question on that.
Well, yeah, I would recommend asking questions for self-guidance. So I like to have that conversation going. I know I've seen a figure that a lot of people don't have inner dialogue, strangely. I don't think that's true of your audience. I would expect your audience is that minority percentage of whatever, 27% that
they're tapped in.
yes. So when you're tapped in, it makes it easier. So I like to start the day by just saying, how good can it get today? How good can I get? How God can I get? In other words, how oneness, how absolute, into the infinite eternity. So I'm bringing in all these levels of higher conscious agency for the day, inviting it, welcoming those levels that are very subtle and they don't want to interfere. They feel like, oh, she's got this. She's, So what I'm saying is that at the 3D plus time, most of us are operating through Earth at that level. And these would include your neighbors and the people that have no inner dialogue. Those of us who are tapped in, we're using all 7 of our typical chakras and 7-dimensional thinking. Many of us go regularly up to 11 dimensions of consciousness. That's been mathematically mapped by EPFL in Switzerland recently, showing that humans are doing that. We are absolutely thinking in 11 dimensions. So by just calling this in and saying, and you don't need to focus on how many dimensions are operating. I mean, some people might want to, but just knowing it's possible, just saying, how good can I get today? How God can I get? Or whatever word you want. Oneness, how absolute. You're accessing the eternal, infinite love that is the source of all creation. That's what you're really calling in. And by doing that, even if you don't yet know exactly, well, what's going to happen now? Which drink do I choose to drink? Who do I choose to be with? Where do I move? You'll be guided. So it's an invitation to receive that inspiration, that protection, that guidance from these levels of higher conscious agency directly, that connect you directly to that divine oneness, that source. And we all have access to that. I know there are people that talk about the egregore and the inversion. We're not going to get into all that today. I think you recently spoke with David Icke, so maybe you touched on that. Anyway, excellent. So I don't need to cover that. But regardless, whatever that may be, you can bypass it. And even if you think I can't, I'm blighted, I'm cursed, it doesn't matter. You have the ability to have free will. Every being, every human being has the right to direct access to the absolute. And there will be those that help you. If you feel like, no, I've been cursed, don't worry about it. Just say, okay, how good can I get, even though it seems like I've been cursed or whatever? Because I know people sometimes can get pretty discouraged. And I've been down in the dumps myself and bounced back with radical optimism anyway. I just thought, yeah, let's do it. I mean, it's a real warrior spirit. My life is going to be misery and it'll never get any better. What's your attitude now? radical optimism. I mean, it's basically crazy. I can't argue that.
It's a choice. It's a crazy choice.
It's crazy. I'm inviting you, make that crazy choice with me, and then just see what happens. Yeah. So that's, to me, the beginning of it all. And then another favorite way to keep on track, if you do have advanced viewers, and for them, this is extra for experts. I love to go into stillness, nothingness, and just use it as a cleansing time to go into just an absolute absence of all thought. And if I can hold it for about, for the experts, if you can hold it for about 20 minutes, every now and then a thought will come in and it's like, phooey. But if you can get to the 20-minute mark, just see if something amazing happens, because that's when I notice, like, wow, this infinite eternal love is here. It feels almost as good as being dead again, which I know that sounds weird, maybe not to your viewers, but it just brings in this ultimate feeling of you're basking in this radiant love with Source, with the Absolute. And then when you come back to your daily life, you are not in the same daily life. You're remember that thing about your energy is going to dial in the correct reality to match you. You're going to be bringing in a very high level reality. So I highly recommend that practice too. And then, of course, gratitude, the basics,
You brought up how much support we have in this reality. And I wanted to bring up a personal experience of yours where you actually had a visitation from Cynthia in the future, and she helped you in some sort of way. What was going on there in that experience?
Yeah, that was very interesting. I was a teenager, and I had just started a relationship. It was my first boyfriend, and I had some love letters in my desk, which I'd hidden underneath a drawer. Like, you pull the drawer out and hide them underneath, because I had a younger sister, and I don't know what I was thinking, but that's where I'd put them. So one night after I'd gone to bed, the light was off in my room. The door was closed to my room. I was alone in my room until an older version of me sort of materialized, shining and glowing, and sort of float walking through the room out of my mirrored closet doors toward me. And she was telepathically communicating with me. I was 16. I'm talking out loud to her. I'm saying, like, what are you doing here? I don't know what I said. It was like, hello? Who are you? And she said, and she was just thinking to me, like, I'm you. Everything's fine. I love you.
She looked older?
Yes.
She looked older.
Yeah, kind of like I do now. I don't know what age she was. I didn't have the presence of mind to ask I had no idea how to, there was no context. There was nothing prepared me for this moment at that age, right? So I was sort of in shock and awe. She float walked all the way to my desk, took something, it's like she reached into it. She didn't open anything. She just, I think her hand went into it, and then her hand came out, and she's holding something in her hand. And then she kept lovingly sending me beautiful, loving thoughts, and then went out the way she came. So it was a very short thing, but I'm talking out loud, which apparently attracted my father's attention. So he opened the door. Is everything all right? And then I realized I've been talking out loud, and I don't know what to say. And it's like,
my imaginary friend.
Right. I'm 16. I don't talk out. I didn't sleep. I don't sleep talk. Nothing like that. So the next morning, I think it suddenly occurred to me, like, oh my gosh, what did she get out of my desk? Oh, she took those letters. And so I pulled the drawer out, looked underneath, and sure enough, the letters were gone, completely gone. But I still couldn't believe that my future self had taken them. That didn't make sense. So I woke my sister up and accused her early in the morning. She didn't know what I was talking about. And then it took me years, decades, to realize, because that first boyfriend is a man that I married. And I realized later that there's a meaning to taking those first love letters, basically giving me permission to let go of something that I might have otherwise had a hard time releasing that relationship. That might have had a hard time getting a divorce, even though it wasn't really right for either of us to continue to be married at that juncture. So it was a gift from my future self, that is how I see it now. At the time, it was a complete weirdness. It was talk about X-Files, really weird. But other people have seen their future selves too. Philip K. Dick saw his future self, the science fiction writer who he wrote The Man in the High Castle. that's been made into a series. And he did a lot of other movies, Minority Report and so forth.
Do you feel that we can consciously call upon our future self and ask for that guidance of where should I go next? What am I meant to do here? All of these different big questions that we have about ourselves that our future self can probably look back and answer them in a more advanced way than us.
Yeah, you can tune in your best possible future self is what I'd recommend. Remember, how good can it get? The radical optimism thing. So knowing for yourself what would be the best version of you and letting yourself be the judge of it, like amongst all myselves, which one do I think is the best? Like, okay, I want to talk to that one, that best possible future self, the one who has courage in the face of great challenges, the one who doesn't give up even when things seem impossible, the one who is constantly positive when there's no reason to be, the one who's creative when it seems like everything's completely stuck. So that one, call to that one, yes. And you can absolutely receive assistance. There's an interpretation of quantum physics that's based on this by John Kramer, a physicist who talks about the transactional interpretation, which is a handshake through time. So you're shaking hands with your future, and you're saying, okay, I'm going to make that connection right now. And that's actually an interpretation to explain the wild, wacky, wonderful world of quantum physics. So that it works with retarded waves, which go the way that we're used to going through time. We're basically all retarded, and we're moving forward through linear time. And then the advanced wave goes back through time. And that kind of makes sense. The advanced one is the future one. So you're saying, yes, I need assistance. And if you don't ask for that help, you might not get it. So it's very important to be the one to call out and say, okay, I need a little assistance, please. So please help me with that.
And even in the other way around, and we can imagine, as you mentioned before, and project our consciousness into a past where we wish we would have done something maybe a little differently. Although that's where I wanted to ask you, where does regret play into all of this? When we know that all timelines are existing at once, why would I want to change something in my past? Yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, in general, I'd say regret's an emotion. So like all emotions, it's useful when it flows through. And like all emotions, if it gets stuck and stagnates, that would be the problem. So regret's a problem if it kind of fixates and grabs hold of our heart and we don't move forward and our life grinds to a halt because of something. But if the regret comes, in my book, Reality Shifts, I talked about having regret that when my roommate's cat died, she told me that her cat Ashes had died. I used to live with her, and then I moved across the street before I got married. So I had a different place with my fiance, and that's when we got married. That's where we were living. And anyway, she told me that Ashes had been hit by a car and he died. And I'd been coming home. He would cross the street to visit me, but I'd been rushing past him, and I felt so much regret. But it washed through. I didn't think anything of it. I certainly didn't expect I'd see him again. That was not something I didn't think that. This was in the 1980s. I wasn't writing these books or anything like that. I just thought, well, phooey, I really blew it. I just made a solemn promise with all my heart and all my soul. If that ever happens again, I'm not going to rush past a beloved cat or being. I'm going to drop everything, I was working at, I think, Citibank. I dropped my briefcase. I don't care what I'm wearing. I'm going to get dirty. I'm just going to get right down there, right with the cat and say, hello, how are you doing? And take that moment to be in relationship. I just made that promise. And I didn't know what was going to happen next. What did happen next, and I write about that in Reality Shifts, Ashes was alive again. And it was so confusing. That was one of the earliest Reality Shifts.
Resurrected.
Yeah. He was absolutely the same cat. He was gray with stripes, unmistakable. He responded to his name. I'm mentioning all this because some people say, well, how do you know it's the same cat? He did look a little bedraggled, almost like maybe something had happened, but he wasn't killed. Like if he had a brush with a car, now he looked a little arthritic and he had trouble washing himself. I didn't care how bedraggled he was. It's like, oh my gosh, you're back. And I did keep that promise, and I did get the time with him that I wouldn't have had otherwise. But when based on that story, people do write to me and they do ask, I've got a regret. A loved one in their life has died. And I get this question a lot. How do you bring back the dead? And I tell them, I don't know how to bring back the dead. But I do know that if you want this sort of a result, it's like what we've been talking about. To dial in that reality, you need to be at that frequency. So I give individual suggestions that they may or may not follow, just about releasing. You don't want to hang on to that regret. You don't want to hang on to that. You want to feel the joy of it. I was latching on to the joy, the commitment, like I will take time with Ashes. And then, my gosh, I got a chance. It blew my mind just to see him alive again. So can that happen? Yes. And that's, I think, what happens with Nelson Mandela. People saw him. They saw reports. He died on Robben's Island when he was incarcerated. And this is where the Mandela Effect gets its name. And then so many of us, I think, around the world felt like, no, that's not okay. And then the next thing, I think I was sort of surprised, like he's president of South Africa and he's touring England. It was like, what's going on? And then Fiona Broome popularized the term Mandela Effect because of the alive again phenomenon. So it's a big one. And of course, Mark Twain, said the rumors of his death were greatly exaggerated. So it's definitely something that does come up and people are noticing.
There are also other types of reality shifts or Mandela effects. You just mentioned the alive again phenomenon. What others have you found? Because you have a whole archive of reality shifts that people send to you on your website. Have you grouped them into commonalities, like these are the different types that you've seen?
Yeah, there are different types. I haven't done that kind of a categorization, but I notice that things often appear and then disappear and then sometimes reappear. So that's definitely something going on. There was Mary Rose Barrington that I had not known about until recently. Jeff Mishlove told me about her work, and she's passed away now, but she had sort of terminologies for flyaways and walkabouts and comebacks. So she was definitely tracking that. With my archives, I'm not so much grouping them. I'm very interested in what people are individually feeling and thinking about when these things occur. I find that to be extremely important. So I don't have an online input form. Instead, I'm the person that they go through, and I ask questions to the reporter, to the experiencer. What were you thinking? What were you feeling? What was going on? Because sure enough, there's a lot going on when we're in that sort of state of mind where suddenly a car that was out of gas can keep going for miles further. Someone that has no money finds money in their pocket or just finds it mysteriously showing up in their wallet. These are categories. People that are...
I've had that one.
Yeah, have you?
I needed like $10 and then I checked in my pocket, no money. And then a few minutes went by, looked in my pocket again, and there it is. I'm like,
I love that.
Yeah, these are the types of things that...
Oh, I love it. Yeah, I share some of the money ones in my small book, High Energy Money, because that is so much fun. I was with my daughters at a Mexican restaurant, and I wanted to give a cash tip. We give tips in America for the waitress because she works hard, and that's most of the money she earns. But I had no money in my wallet, so my children were quite young, and I just said, should I look again? And they said, yeah, because they knew about reality shifts, and it was happening all the time. Like if something's missing, hope for a reality shift, walk around the house, come back, look again. It'll probably be there. So I just kept opening my wallet and pulling out a dollar bill, put it on the table, shut the wallet. Like, well, there was one more in there. And they're looking with me. That's all there is, just $1. Should I look again? Yes! I pulled out like $6 bills, one after another, out of an empty wallet. So this is so much fun.
Do you think in that scenario, something had to do with just the amount of like joy and play that you guys...
Yes.
It was like a game for your girls and for, your children. It was a game to them. Like it was fun.
Yes.
Was that a frequency vibration that allows these reality apparitions to happen?
I find that very conducive. Absolutely. Just to be in that joyful state of mind. Sometimes when there's a crisis, people have trouble, like they see an empty wallet and there would be that panic. And that's the other big message today I hope people get. Like, no matter what it looks like, don't assume that that's the final say. things can change, and they often do. And that means the past can change. Now there's another dollar bill in the wallet. So go ahead and pull it out. Yeah. And you're right. Children are very, I think they're open-minded. They haven't yet been told or been squelched down to believe like, oh, once you've seen it, then it's stuck. That's the way it has to be. So they're much more open-minded. And that energy is delightful. Just and doing it for someone else. Like, this is the money we want to give to the waitress. And isn't she a nice person? Yes, she needs the tip. Let's look again. So much fun. It was so much fun.
Service to others, joy, laughter. Like, there, I start seeing a recipe going on here. I don't know. That could be the next book, Cynthia.
Oh, yeah.
This is one of the last questions I have before we go into the final segment, but has there been a Mandela effect that you've come across that you feel like a lot of people have overlooked that holds deep significance for humanity?
Wow. So that would be a specific Mandela effect. I think they are messages, and that's what you're getting into here. Like, can we see a message in the Mandela effect itself? Yeah, I think it seems like we used to be at the far distant part of the Sagittarius arm of the Milky Way. It seems like we moved more to the center. So it seems like that's a big message right there. I like to look at symbols and see, like, what is that really saying? So I'm reading a Mandela Effect. And for people who don't know what I'm talking about, some of us remember Carl Sagan back when he had this Cosmos TV show. I'm old enough to remember watching it when it first came out, and he used to say star stuff, and he had such a funny voice. He's really sweet. So he was talking about the universe and stars, and he was definitely showing where the solar system is, where Earth is. And it was sort of like we were way on the outskirts of everything. And now we have moved significantly closer to the center. It's like we've moved from being not unimportant exactly, but that's the kind of feeling when you're way away from the center. It's like if you're invited to a big concert or an event, and if you get seated next to the stage, those are the good seats. If you're in the center, then you're right close to the star of the show. So it's like moving to center stage. That's what it feels like. So I'd say,
or we became the star of the show.
Yes.
In a big way.
Yes. And that's what I say the message is. And I think that's not been really paid attention to. I think people have not really looked at that one, or I haven't heard people talk about it. And I think that's huge. So I think and that's good news. You know, it's not a time to panic. It means it's showtime, and we know that. It's what we've been talking about for this whole conversation today, that so many things are changing. The Mandela Effect Toolkit is here. Humanity is ready, and we have so many friends and family, other beings, other, consciousness. It's not just humans. We know that just looking at other life forms on the planet. We also know probably there are other life forms off the planet, as well as interdimensional, that may be advanced. And yes, and those of us who can feel their presence, can feel their love, their support, and that they're ready for us.
Beautiful. Cynthia, we end every show with a segment called The Final Trio, which are some questions we ask at the end. Before that, where would you send people to connect with you, with the beautiful work that you're bringing through to humanity, and any other things that you have coming up that you'd like to share with us?
My best place to contact me is realityshifters.com. That's my website. And it's, again, Reality Shifters, plural. We're all realityshifters.com. And the other part of that question, events. Yes, there is something coming up this year, 2025. It's the only in-person event that I'm doing. It will be with Paula Harris, who you've had on your show, and Julian Chameroy from Paris, France. And the three of us are all experiencers of contact. We'll be doing a couple of CE5s, but it's all about oneness. It's really about consciousness. It's about the new humans on the planet now, and where are we going? What are these quantum superpowers that I've been talking about? How can we access that? And, how can we get into that state? Just bringing people together in Crestone, Colorado, which is like the Himalayas of the United States with its clear skies. It's one of the clearest sky places in America. And it's frequently recognized as being a UFO site as well as a spiritual site. So that's happening August 22nd through the 24th. And if you go to my website, go to the events page, you can see the information. It's also on Paula's website at Starworks USA. So her website is also listing that event as well.
Beautiful. We'll include everything down in the show notes in the description with all the links that you just mentioned. For the final trio, these first two questions are personalized to the guest, to you, and the last one we ask at the end of every show. So the first one is, imagine you are speaking directly to a parallel aspect of humanity in another timeline. What would you thank them for, and what would you remind them of?
Yeah, thank you for your persistence going through so many changes and reminding humanity you are quite wise, much wiser than you realize, and that the wisdom is much more than just patience, that there's a depth of love to it. There's a beauty of our souls that you can feel, and that connection directly to the absolute.
Second question is, what's the most beautiful glitch in the Matrix that you've ever witnessed or experienced?
Gosh, that's hard to say. Well, once I saw time come to a stop when my daughter was she'd been holding on to my husband's hair and she let go. He had his hands full of suitcases. And I didn't know time could stop. I was about 6 or 7 feet, another 2 meters behind her. And I was in a train station and there was a very hard floor, like marble. This was in Lausanne, Switzerland, where we were living at the time. But it got slower and slower, and then it came to a stop. And I thought, there is a God, because if that had not happened, then my daughter, her head was very heavy. She was a baby and her head was huge compared to her body. So she started falling, and I would not have had time to get all the way up to her to drop my suitcases and catch her. But because time started slowing down and I could hear it slowing down and come to a complete stop like that, that blew my mind. I thought, this is amazing. That was around 1991 in Lausanne, Switzerland.
Oh my.
Yeah. And then I realized anything is possible.
Wow. I didn't know about that story. Let me take it in for a moment. Follow-up question. When you realized that time could stop, how did that change how you lived your life?
Wow. I felt like the quality of grace was with me that I don't think that I'd accepted into my heart and soul. It felt like just really knowing that there's a blessing here, that there's so much love, that my need in that moment was heard. I didn't have time to ask or say anything. It was just as fast as thought. It was just like, no, I have to catch her. And then everything changed so I could. It blew my mind. I think that was it was way before I started writing about these things, years before. But I think that was a pivotal moment for me to realize there's something very big going on, and I can't deny it. And at some point I'll need to talk about it. So I'm doing my best.
Yeah. And then you dedicated your life to sharing that message. So, wow, what an honor. This last question that we ask at the end is called the time capsule question. It requires us to travel a little bit out into the future, around 20 years down the line. I chose out those time frames because I believe that's going to be a time in history when the young generations of today will be stepping into leadership positions around the world. And just like any great leader, they will have the opportunity to be surrounded by great mentors, resources, access to wisdom and knowledge. And you are one of those that left behind something very important for these leaders in the form of a time capsule. So you're given the opportunity to have your own personal time capsule with your name on it, whatever color graffiti you want to put on it, artwork, and you have the opportunity to include whatever you wanted inside of this time capsule. that the young generations of today would open in 20 years down the line when they're ready to lead to their highest potential? This question is really about legacy and what you would leave behind to the future generations. So it could be something physical, non-physical, whatever your imagination could conceive of. But what do you feel the next generation of leaders would most need from you to be able to be the best leaders and the best potential humans for our future? What would that be?
Wow, that's interesting. I think it would have to be something that's very individually received. So it may seem intangible, but it would be something that each person opening that would see something that they uniquely need to recognize. This is a quality that they're seeing of themselves that they'd never seen before, that they're seeing themselves with such depth, with such richness of awareness that it opens their heart, just so they can feel that right now they're in the presence of divine love greater than they've ever known. And not from me in particular. My legacy is just to help allow that contact directly with the Absolute, that you are directly connected to the Absolute for the guidance that you need, and for each person to feel it in a unique way that directly touches their personal experience in that moment and directly connects to whatever that decision, plan, or perceived problem that they might be facing in whatever situations are occurring. Because no matter what's happening, it doesn't matter what it looks like. It doesn't matter what people told you. You absolutely have access, direct access to the Absolute. Anything, and I mean anything and everything, not only can change in this moment, but through all time and all space. And it will match the level of resonance that you bring. So, but this needs to be worded for each individual to take it so it feels profound and heart-opening for them in that moment. And that's a unique, specific individual experience, because different things are activators and keys for different people.
That's a powerful response, Cynthia. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for your courage to explore these topics, even with your scientific background, and being able to push the bounds of what we know in reality and what we can imagine in worlds. We really, my takeaway from this conversation is we're not limited by anything. And we're stepping into a world not of limitation, but of possibility. So thank you for paving the way. Thank you for being a leader in that and being a voice to that. Such a pleasure to connect with you. And I know we'll do many, many more of these down the line for sure.
Thank you so much, Emilio, for who you are, what you're bringing, and everything you share. It's so far beyond words. Can't put it in words. Thank you.
Thank you so much.